I was on adrenaline, running on adrenaline. I was in survival mode, and all I knew is what I had to do. I could not leave there. I slept in that hospital every single night but 2 nights. Just a multitude of emotions. It's a journey. It is a journey. So the advocacy that I do now is the give back part. I never want anyone to be caught off guard about multiple myeloma.
Marsha, I know we've spoken so much about the care partner experience. You also have done so much in this time becoming an advocate and for something that is such an important message. So what was the shift for you? You did talk about turning to advocacy.
Once my husband started getting better, that was when, for me, it switched in my mind. Hey, you can be an advocate for other people, because home is taken care of to a degree now. Things have settled down. You need to give back. So the advocacy that I do now is the give back part. I never want anyone to be caught off guard about multiple myeloma. I know there are a lot of other things out there to be caught off guard about, but for me, it's multiple myeloma. And just, if you just know what it is, know enough to ask your doctor what it is, that is what I'm trying to do when I just share with people now. And then the advocacy part is share with them what it's about, but then also, once you are taking care of someone with myeloma, be their advocate, because it's a journey and it can be challenging at times. So they need somebody.
So with that being said, I think in this time you learned some things too, right? About the rate of diagnosis and how it impacts certain communities more. And you really are working on making sure that more people are aware of this. So please share some of that with us.
Yeah, again, in the beginning, I didn't want to know the details about it. I didn't want to know the details about the disease, let alone how it affects anybody. I just did not. And at some point I decided, yeah, you need to know. And in learning that, and I happened across Health Tree Foundation, and there were some other organizations that had information about myeloma. And what I learned was that Blacks are predisposed to the diagnosis, 2 to 3 times more likely than Caucasians to be diagnosed with multiple myeloma. And honestly, my reaction was, of course we are. Like other stuff, like everything else. Of course we are. So that was kind of a turning point for me. The other thing that I learned was, I learned more men than women are usually diagnosed. I learned that African Americans are on average 4 to 5 years younger being diagnosed. And the thing that really got me was, I learned that African Americans quite often have one of the lower risk genetic myelomas. There are lots of kinds, okay? Low risk, high risk. So we are often diagnosed with low risk. However, we're dying more. So the doctors are saying you're diagnosed with low risk more likely. So if, and that is the operative word, if you can receive equitable treatment, the treatment that's best for you, just like Caucasians would receive the treatment that's best for them, your outcomes could be better. And so I'm like, okay, so then we're into the whole health equity and disparities and inequities space, which I'm very, when I look for people to just collaborate with, I'm looking for people in those spaces. because those organizations and those people get it. It's like, if we could just get equitable treatment, we could have better outcomes. Now, I want to be clear, I want everyone to have great outcomes. But I also want African Americans to have outcomes that could be greater because we're getting the same care or equitable care.
And to be really specific, Marsha, that means that when Black Americans are getting diagnosed, even with a lower risk or low risk myeloma, it's because the treatment that they're supposed to get that would bring those numbers up, they're not getting. Is that right? Is there anything else to describe why that's happening?
Well, first of all, it goes back to awareness. We don't know there's such a thing. So that's where it starts. That is where it starts. I'm doing a campaign now. Doctor, could this be multiple myeloma? Like, if I could teach everybody enough to say to your doc, if something's not, you're not figuring out what the diagnosis is, you don't know what's wrong, you have these things, these symptoms, doctor, could it be multiple myeloma? Because then the testing could start. So that's that's the first thing is just, we don't know about it. So we're not aware of it. We're not educated about it. But then even when you think about diagnosis, so now there are still these disparities because, well, first of all, before diagnosis, there are disparities because we're not always taken seriously when we present to a hospital, to a doctor, to a nurse. Our symptoms, or I should say our complaints about what's going on, are sometimes minimized. We're not seen, we're not heard. Testing is not being done proactively to figure out. So that's even before diagnosis. Then after diagnosis, then we have all these social determinants of health that are still there. We might live in an area where, you know, socioeconomics are low. We might not live in an area where an academic cancer institution is. We may not have transportation to get to these academic centers. We may not know, we just don't know. The little community in which I live, we don't get that influx of information. It can be all kinds of things. Then when you talk about even clinical trials for African Americans, well, I might not be in a financial situation that I can take off X number of weeks to travel to wherever to be in this trial. So all of these things I've learned. We might not have even as simple as internet in the homes. So those are the things that I've learned, and those are the things that make it, you know, myeloma is already a tough journey, and now we have to add these kinds of inequities on top of it to try to get through myeloma.
What is your message to people about getting that testing done, or making sure you're asking to understand that it's getting done and that you also know the results? And because that's a big impact.
It's huge. And those things are difficult medical things. And, you know, some of the stuff still just kind of goes over my head. And I'm just like, oh, I can't even understand that. But what I do know is know enough, for instance, the common signs and symptoms, okay? And that's high calcium. You know, you get your blood work done. It could be high calcium. There could be renal dysfunction. So your kidney numbers might not be right. You might be anemic, and you could have bone pain. So those are the big ones. The acronym for that is CRAB, C-R-A-B, right? Know enough about that if you're going through something, you ask your doctor, could it be multiple myeloma? And then, can you test me for it? Like, you don't even have to know what the tests are. Here's one thing that happens in our community. Everybody Black is told that we're anemic. At some point, all 5 of us in our house have been told that we're anemic. And I heard one of the Black myeloma specialists say, we're not anemic just because we're Black. We're not anemic because we have this melanin in our skin. Like, push back on your doctor, because it could be something very simple. You need to take iron pills, or it could be something very serious like myeloma. So that's what I say to people, like, you don't have to be a doctor, you don't have to know every single thing, but ask questions, demand time to be heard, and push for testing. And then I always say to people who are then diagnosed, if you could have somebody go to appointments with you, or somebody to be there for you because you can't get everything, take notes. I automatically take notes because that's what I do, but not everybody does that. You can even take notes on your phone. Like, you have to, there has to be a level of self-advocacy in this space, that will serve you well.
You brought up testing, and that also brought to mind the issue of, clinical trials and tests in general, and the medical institutions in general, because there's obviously a history, and we've talked so much about in a lot of conversations, maybe not enough, about why there's hesitation for a lot of people, especially in the Black communities, why there's a hesitation to want to know more or listen to institutions.
That's right. Oh, absolutely. There's distrust for good reason. When I think about me and I think about the generation, so I'll go to my grandparents. That was that generation that they were like, absolutely not. You will not use me as a guinea pig. Those were the words, because there were situations where Blacks were not, done right, and we lost lives, and it was just a terrible situation. And those things are those events are in history, and we know what they are, and it wasn't even done in a manner that tried to make Blacks feel like we were trying to do you right. It just was not right. Okay. So then when I look at my mom's generation, she still has some of that, a lot of distrust, like, I'm not sure what these doctors are doing. You look at my generation, it's carried down. It's even carried down when I even look at my kids. Now, I think it's getting better as as we go down the chain, but it's still very real.
My last question on this before I open it up to you is talking about conversations and family. These are family conversations to be had. I mean, that's a big part of how we can get that information out there. And, if someone has one diagnosis for some cancers, that's an increased risk for their family members, and they need to understand with history. But a lot of those conversations don't happen. And some of that is cultural reasons. So,
It is.
yeah, can you share more about that?
Yeah, the Black community, we don't always openly share. And it's not because we don't want to help our families. We were taught, so I'm thinking now about my generation. We were taught that what goes on in our household stays in this household. And you will not go out of this household talking about what goes on. Okay. And remember what I said when my husband got sick. My first go-to was, we will not play this out in social media. So even my generation, that's what I think about. That can be a concern in the Black community, because you just said it, like, we absolutely need to share, especially with our immediate families, like myeloma. So I just say to families, as much as you're comfortable with, share. I do encourage, at least share, like, send this brochure out to your circle. It's just about myeloma. Just share that. You don't have to share anything about you personally, but share the information. So that's kind of how I talk to people.
Is there any last thing that for you, you've done this work now for some time, top takeaways or the most important messages? I know you've touched on a lot already, but anything else that you want to make sure to share about specifically myeloma in the Black community?
Yeah, this is the work that just brings me joy. And I've never shared information with people and they thanked me and they hugged me. You know, when I think about career, I've talked to a lot of people. I run my businesses. I would have to share about, my business. Come to me as a lawyer. I can do this for you. I can do that for you. That stuff, although I was helping people, but it pales in comparison to saying to someone, have you ever heard of multiple myeloma? No, what is it? And I tell them, and they're like, oh, well, is there a test? Can I get screened? What do I need to know about it? That brings me joy that I feel like I'm impacting lives like one at a time. And as I look at other people who are doing the same thing and other organizations who are doing the same thing, I'm like, yeah, this is the important work.
You are doing incredible work, Marsha. I want to say thank you for not just doing that, but for taking the time also to share your personal story and your advocacy work with so many people out there. And looking forward to keeping up with you or trying to keep up with you. I don't know if I can, but with all that you do, I have no doubt that you're going to continue to make an incredible mark on people.
I appreciate that. And I have to say, I have to thank my family. I do, and my close circle, because especially my family, I can't do what I do without them. You know, I'm still working. I'm still working my jobs, my consulting and, the practice, and they are there for me when I need them. And then my close circle, that village, always there. So I appreciate you caring enough about my story to want to talk to me. And I'm so glad we met and connected. That was meant to be.